The world, where the rules of time and space had long been blurred, concealed grim secrets. Far beyond the city walls, out of sight of human eyes, stood a place long forgotten. Once, long before the great wars and revolutions, this place served as a sanatorium for the mentally ill, but its reputation quickly faded after strange disappearances and horrifying rumors. Now this place had become a symbol of fear for everyone who had ever heard of its psychiatric hospital Crowley. Legends about it spread across the region. People said that no one who passed through its massive iron gates ever returned. Official documents stated that the hospital had been closed for decades, but some claimed it was still operating, though now for other purposes, dark and sinister ones. Alexei had always been a skeptic. As a final-year journalism student, he never believed in stories about the paranormal and supernatural. For him, such tales were always fabrications, tools for manipulation or entertainment. But when his friends dared him to spend the night in Crowley, his rational mind faltered. "It's just a building," he kept telling himself as he stood before the rusty gates. In his hands, he held a camera and a notebook, his main tools. The night was quiet, but the silence was strange, unnatural, as if the sky and the earth were holding their breath in anticipation of something sinister. Alexei glanced at the old sign reading Crowley Psychiatric Hospital. The paint was peeling, the letters half erased, but the meaning was clear. He opened the gates, and they emitted a prolonged screech, as if warning him. The first thing that struck him when he entered was a strange sensation of time slowing down. Alexei checked his watch. 3 minutes had passed, but it felt like 30. He shivered, feeling a slight chill run down his spine, but he reassured himself it was just nerves. Inside the hospital, everything looked abandoned. The walls were covered in dust and mold, and the floors creaked beneath his feet. But the strangest thing was the feeling that the building was watching him. Every step echoed, and sometimes it seemed that the footsteps weren't his own. The walls here seemed alive, whispering something incomprehensible. Alexei decided to start in the central hall. The enormous room, lined with doctors' offices, was empty. He began taking photos, inspecting the abandoned desks, chairs, and cabinets filled with files. But when he lifted the camera to his eyes to take another shot, something flickered in the lens. A person. No, too fast. Probably just a shadow from a branch outside, he thought, though deep down he knew it wasn't. The further he ventured into the building, the more bizarre things began to happen. At first it was subtle sounds like the rustling of leaves, then faint footsteps, and finally voices. They were weak, like distant whispers, but Alexei began to discern words. "He has come. You know what to do." The voices seemed to come from another dimension, their nature defying logical explanation. Peeking into one of the rooms, he saw something that made his heart race. On the floor was a strange symbol, painted with blood. In the center of the symbol lay animal bones, and around them, crude human-like figures, as if left by children playing with dark magic. Alexei began to feel reality around him starting to distort. Time seemed stretched yet compressed at once. It felt like each of his steps echoed through eternity. He continued his journey through the hospital, but now it seemed the hallways were changing shape. Where there had been a straight path, now there was a turn. Where the exit should have been, there was only another dark passage. The building seemed to be absorbing him, stripping away any hope of escape. The further he walked, the deeper he fell into this dark, merciless world. This was not just a hospital, it was a labyrinth, a living entity designed to trap souls. And then, in one of the last corridors, Alexei met them. The creature standing before him was not human. It was too tall, its skin too thin like paper, and its eyes were black voids from which something resembling darkness emanated. It moved silently like mist, filling the air with the stench of decay. And it wasn't alone. More of the same creatures followed behind it, their quiet steps blended with the whispers of the darkness that was engulfing Alexei's mind. The creatures didn't attack him immediately. They surrounded him, making it clear that the way back was sealed. Alexei couldn't breathe. It was as if his lungs were filled with thick fog. Fear paralyzed his body. He realized that he had been trapped from the very beginning, that this building was alive, and that his fate had been sealed long before he crossed the threshold. He tried to run, but his legs seemed glued to the floor. Everything around him froze, and even his own thoughts became slow, as if dissolved in this dark reality. And then he heard their voice. "Welcome home," they whispered, and their deathly darkness consumed him completely. Years later, Alexei's friends decided that he had simply moved to another city. No one dared to follow him to Crowley, and no one wanted to believe he had vanished. However, the hospital still stood in its place, and those few who dared to approach it at night claimed to hear whispers coming from the windows. Whispers of those who would never leave this labyrinth.